Israel is going to occupy 25% of Gaza and orders the evacuation of Rafah again, meaning things are really heating up with the entire situation. Meanwhile, Israel is able to go after high-value targets in Beirut as their relations with Jordan are about to take a major downward turn. I'm Ben Hilton, and this is the Israel Guys. We have so much to get into with what's happening between Israel and Hamas in Gaza right now. But before we do, I want to set the stage for what's happening on a broader context. Israel just struck a major target in Lebanon. According to reports, the Mossad and the Shin Bet worked together with the IDF to do an overnight strike on Beirut's southern suburbs. Apparently, there was no warning by Israel, as it should be when there are high-value targets on the line. Warning them just gives them the option to escape. And the strike appears to have damaged the upper 3 floors of a building while leaving the lower floors intact, including the windows and everything. So, what was the target of this strike? Apparently, it was the deputy head of Hamas's Palestinian affairs, who is also a Hezbollah terrorist himself. According to an Israeli statement, this terrorist is not only working with Hezbollah in Lebanon, but is also directly involved with Hamas operations.
He had recently been directing Hamas terrorists and assisting them in an attempt to carry out a major imminent attack against Israeli civilians. The terrorist posed a real and immediate threat, what we called ticking bomb.
According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, at least 3 people total were killed and 7 more were wounded in the strike, but we don't know how accurate that figure actually is. Of course, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun condemned the strike, calling it a dangerous warning, which of course it is entirely meant to be. If you harbor terrorists who threaten the security of the state of Israel, Israel will find them and they will kill them. Israel has made this very clear, all the way back to how they dealt with the Nazis after World War II. The era of Jews being victims to world aggression is over, thank God, hopefully forever. These kinds of strikes are what is making Hamas operations in Gaza more and more desperate. I mean, at this point, it's probably safer to be a skydiving instructor without a parachute than it is to be a Hamas commander in the Middle East. But regardless, the insanity continues. And speaking of insanity, we have some news about Israel's eastern border. Israel's relations with Jordan have been deteriorating for quite some time now. And even though Jordan has been somewhat of a strategic partner with Israel over the last few decades, in recent years, they have done little to stop Iran from smuggling weapons over the border with Israel. Security officials are estimating that tens of thousands of weapons have been brought illegally over the border over just the last 10 years into Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank. And many of these weapons are going directly into the hands of terrorists who then use them to kill Jews in terrorist attacks. And Israel has finally had enough. Israel has just announced that they will be breaking ground on a new 309-mile stretch of border fence reaching from the Golan Heights all the way down to the Ramon Airport north of Eilat. This fence will be loaded with cutting-edge sensor and surveillance equipment, although we better hope that the IDF have learned their lesson from October 7th to make sure that it is also highly monitored by in-person security as well. It will probably be some time before we see the completion of this project, but Israel is finally beginning the operation, which is a very good thing. And speaking of security in Judea and Samaria, for far too long, Israel's Biblical Heartland, historically known as Judea and Samaria, has been falsely labeled the West Bank, and for good reason. As our good friend Ari Abramowitz likes to say, it's much easier to say let's take the settlers out of the West Bank than it is to say let's take the Jews out of Judea. That's why we created this quality t-shirt that shows the West Bank on the front crossed out, replaced with the biblical term Judea and Samaria instead. The back has a map of Judea and Samaria, populated with 23 of the most well-known biblical locations found in the region, along with the slogan, Israel's Biblical Heartland. Go to theisraelguys.com/store right after watching this video to pick up your statement of support for the Biblical Heartland of Israel. That's theisraelguys.com/store. So back to what's happening in Gaza. Israel just announced that they will be expanding their ground operations in Gaza to occupy 25% of the Strip over the next 2 to 3 weeks. This is probably in response to the failed negotiations for the return of more hostages by Hamas Israel had demanded that Hamas release 11 living hostages in return for a 40-day ceasefire with Israel. Hamas offered 5 in exchange for a 50-day ceasefire. Obviously, this kind of pushback by Hamas isn't acceptable for Israel, so Israel is now pursuing what they had announced a little while back. Refusal by Hamas to release Israeli hostages will come at the cost of more occupation of Gaza by Israel. To this effect, Israel issued evacuation orders for Rafah once again. According to the IDF announcement, the IDF is returning to intense operations to dismantle the capabilities of the largest organizations in these areas. For your safety, move immediately to the shelters in Al-Mawasi. As part of the IDF's current operations in northern and central Gaza, ground forces just dismantled a 1-kilometer-long terror tunnel. They also discovered another workshop used for producing rockets and launchers, and while doing that, they were able to take out another 50 Hamas terrorists. All this comes as things are heating up with Iran. Just a few days ago, Trump stated, if they don't make a deal, there will be bombing. He also added that there's a chance that secondary tariffs could be imposed if negotiations fail. In response, Iran's president sent a message to Trump reaffirming its policy against direct negotiations with the United States. So, in what seems like it could be a preparation for a strike on Iran, the U.S. has been moving B-2 bombers into the region. Apparently, they have moved an additional 3 B-2 bombers to the Diego Garcia Air Force Base, joining the 4 that were already stationed there. They have also moved in refueling aircraft as well. For context, a B-2 bomber can carry up to 40,000 pounds of munitions, which makes a lot of explosive power on standby to hit Iran with, should Trump choose to do that. Guys, we need to continue praying for Israel, for God to restore peace to Israel once again, that Israel could be a light to the world without having to fight this constant state of warfare against all of these enemies that have stood up against the nation of Israel. Now is the time to stand with Israel. If you want to stand with Israel in a public fashion, now is the time to grab your Biblical Heartland t-shirt. Go to theisraelguys.com/store to pick that up, to stand with Judea and Samaria with the correct biblical terms of Judea and Samaria. Also, subscribe to our channel here at The Israel Guys if you have not already. If you found this video helpful, share it with a friend. Drop a comment down below. We love engaging with you in the comments. If you'd like to support our work here at The Israel Guys, head over to theisraelguys.com/donate. As always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda and connect with the truth of what is happening in Israel. We'll be back here soon at The Israel Guys.